You're listening to, and this is why I love comics.
Andy and Mike!
And welcome everybody, and this is why I love comics. With me, as usual, is Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Howdy do.
And we have a special guest today, because we're going to be talking about something we haven't talked about yet. Well, actually, we did a little bit, didn't we? We talked about comic conventions. And with us is Matt, who...
Hey, what's up?
Hey. And I thought having Matt on would be cool, because he also is of our age. And... he has gone to different conventions than we have. I'm the one that's gone to probably the most uninteresting conventions, because I just have gone locally and to Detroit and Chicago. You guys have been all over the place, so I thought with Mike's going to San Diego and Matt living in different areas of the country too, I thought it'd be interesting to hear some different perspectives and some different convention stories that we could all share a little bit of. And we don't have to tell them all in this one, because I'm sure we'll have other convention podcasts eventually. Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
Matt, since we haven't had a guest on before, and I kind of know the answer to this question, but when did you start collecting comics?
Oh, man. Probably... I had comics from very, very early on there, but they mostly my hand-me-downs from my brother. I think my dad liked comics from when he was a kid and bought a bunch of Spider-Man comics from my brother, and he wasn't super interested in them. So when I inherited them, they were in pretty good shape, and I still actually have them. So probably 5 to 8 years old.
Okay, yeah, about the same time I did.
Yeah.
Mine was closer to 8 than 5, but yeah, my brother, I guess, had a few comics before I did, and I kind of inherited that too, so that's pretty similar.
When you say inherit, do you mean you actually got them, or were they surreptitiously stolen?
Probably a little bit of both, I don't think he really cared about them. He would just kind of leave them on the floor of his bedroom, and I would pick them up and read them, and then they would sort of migrate to my room. So, yeah, I guess I stole them.
Yeah, confession's good for the soul.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what kept you going collecting comics?
Well, I had probably the same 10 or 12 comics for probably years. And then, as a lot of guys our age, I started watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And, there was an episode that had X-Men in it. And I remember my birthday was coming up, and I found out that Marvel had a subscription service. So my dad decided to buy me a couple subscriptions to probably Spider-Man and Star Wars or something like that.
Sure.
And X-Men. And then I started getting a subscription. Totally ragged, of course. When you get them in the mail, they were destroyed.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the Postal Service is necessarily the kindest to comic books.
No. And I got them back when they were in those brown paper sleeves that were half of them were glued to the cover.
Right, and there'd always be a fold right down the middle, maybe.
Yeah.
I definitely had a couple of those too. I'm not sure when I started with the mail-aways. I think I got when the new Teen Titans and the Legion of Superheroes started going to Baxter formatting, in the mid-'80s, I think that's when I started getting those through the mail, and probably just for a year or two. I don't think I probably did much more than that. But yeah, I definitely remember they would be rough shape when I got them, and but I still loved getting that in the mail. Once a month, running out.
Did they come in the plastic? Did they come in the plastic sleeves?
No, I remember the paper bag kind of thing. So
nice.
Convention wise, I have some questions. I guess I could start with those, but
The con game?
The con game, yeah. But Mike, you you've been to a few conventions. Like we started going out to conventions, and I tried to remember what our first one was.
I think like legit convention would have been it was the Dearborn, which is now I think the Novi
Novi one, yeah.
convention, but it
Yeah.
was originally in Dearborn.
Yeah, before
And it,
that, I went to a couple. I think my dad took me. Like they had the Holiday Inn,
Yeah.
where it was just those were great because they were just comics. Like there was no toys. It was a bunch of comic dealers renting a room at the Holiday Inn, on 28th Street here in Grand Rapids, and just we would just go in, and it was just box after box after box of long boxes, and I remember. I think that's where I met Dave Stevens, who's one of the first people I met at a con, which was pretty great. Yeah,
yeah,
and I think
the
that
Rocketeer.
I think that was prior to us going to Dearborn, but maybe not. I'm trying to think what year that was, and that was one of my great special moments meeting Dave Stevens. Not bad for starting out at a convention. It's just a great memory of just going there and buying comics and meeting. It was so small. Like he was probably one of two guests there, in total, and just meeting him was pretty cool. But after that, yeah, Dearborn, and I've been to Chicago, both conventions there and stuff like that. But that's pretty much like where I've been at. But Mike, I know you've been to a couple places that I haven't.
Yeah, a few. No, do you want to keep it to comic conventions or also game conventions?
Let's try and keep it to comics.
Okay, that's the name of the podcast itself.
It's why I love comics,
Yeah, and asterisks and games.
And games. I do love games too, but
No, in that case, yeah, it was the New York Comic Con. Went to that several times, and the San Diego Comic Con several times. Wizard World here or there, smattering around the areas, and then the Chicago Comic Con before it became Wizard World.
right. And some of that was you were working, like
Yeah, which is a whole new perspective. When you're in a booth, holy crap, that is like a completely different world than when you're walking the floor.
right.
And I think the whole thing is that when you're in a booth, the celebrities come to you, and it's at their pace, so that you actually have a conversation, as opposed to next, who's next? Come on,
Right.
keep the line moving.
Waiting in line, yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty amazing. That was always like whenever we went to San Diego, that was like, holy crap! I didn't want to like. It's one of those things where it's like, give me a catheter and a Depends, and I will never leave this booth because you never knew who was going to come next to the booth.
You didn't want to miss anything, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
What what years were these?
I would say probably from like with the San Diego, it was right as is booming. So it was the years like 2000 to 2004. Nope, let's scratch that. 2008, and then New York was like 2011. Oh, and then C2E2 was in there as well somewhere.
yeah. I've been
After
to
a
that
while,
one. That's
it's
not.
kind of that blurs. But yeah, the New York, I didn't go there until I was with another company.
Yeah, you were working for a toy company, right?
Yeah, at that point, the game company. Yeah, the first toy company I went to work the San Diego Comic Con all the time.
Yeah.
And then the game company, I went to San Diego as part of like an inventors sweep where I'd meet up with different game inventors and toy inventors. And I would go through all of California and just coincidentally wind up at San Diego Comic Con to meet with people. So
Yeah.
that was great. And then, so I was at the game company for that part. And that's where it trailed off for San Diego. And then it was impossible to be a booth at San Diego unless you had like basically inherited a booth. You were on like a 3 or 4 year waiting list just to exhibit at the show. But where New York Comic Con, they were just eager to have anybody. I mean, like, I think the first year we were there, 5-hour energy drink was the next booth over. And nothing says Comic Con like a 5-hour energy. And what was great was that they were giving out samples. So like when you're on your feet all that time, crap, man, that battery acid was amazing. It kept you going.
It's like the gutters at the Grand Rapids Comic Con, right, Matt?
GutterCon.
Yeah, Gutter Con.
So
Matt, you've gone to a few conventions, but I don't know which ones you've been to. So, which ones?
Well, I'm kind of jealous because I've always wanted to go to San Diego, but I did go to the New York Comic Con before it was called Comic Con. It was called something like New York Comic Extravaganza or something like that. This is like in the early 90s, like 92 or 93. There was a big one in Philadelphia. That one may have been called the Philadelphia Comic Book Extravaganza. It was like 93 or 94. And there was a total metric ton of those Holiday Inn type conventions that I went to, which actually were my favorite. You know, like the big conventions, they were fun and it was great people watching, but just so many people there, and maybe like 40% comics, and probably even less nowadays. But
Right.
those Holiday Inn comic cons were fantastic. It'd be like 95% just comic boxes.
Yeah, those are great.
Probably my favorite was New York or Philly.
Just the people you met, or just the early.
Oh, it was just kind of, early experience. It was probably my first really big convention, and it was, probably everyone from the comic industry, and all the names that you knew about, and probably all the ones that I should have known about. I remember at the time I was bringing a portfolio around and shopping it around to different comic companies, and I had a portfolio review by Ross Andrew, and who I had no idea who he was at that time, and I was probably like 19, right? And he was super cool, and he was really nice, very soft-spoken. He gave me some really good advice. He liked my drawings, and at the time he was, I guess, maybe doing a little bit of work for this little independent comic company called Silver Skull or something like that. And he sent me over there with my samples to talk to the editor, and I gave the samples to the editor, and that was kind of the last time I heard from them. But I remember he signed one of my Spider-Man comic books for me because I knew enough to look around to see if I had a comic with his name in it. And so I grabbed the Spider-Man, and for the life of me, I cannot find that comic anywhere. I think he signed it somewhere on the inside of one of the comics, and I just can't find it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got to talk to Ross Andrew for like 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And there were lots of other people. Todd McFarlane was getting really big at the time, and that's when you'd stand in line for 2 hours to get your Spider-Man or your Spawn signed, and just everybody. It was like the early '90s when it was just exploding.
Right.
Spider-Man 2099. You could meet like everyone who worked on it. So. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. And I remember I brought my dad with me, and my best friend Dave came with me, and we just had such a great time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's one of my favorite conventions we went to, Mike, was Chicago, the Chicago Con, where Image was just started. They just did this Image. They had a big tent in the back. They couldn't even fit it in the hotel, and I think that was the first time that we didn't get a ride. Like, we drove down there. And we got the hotel at the Ramada where the convention was, which was great because we could just walk down and back up to our room and stuff like that. When the Image tent was in the back, and we got to meet, all the Image creators and stuff like that. That was pretty cool to me. It was like 94, I think it was.
Yeah,
and,
right around that time. 93,
yeah,
94.
And just, get it going down the line. It was a huge line. We had to wait for like 2 hours to get through it. And you had your portfolio, and people were looking at yours from Image and stuff like that. And what I always ended up doing a lot of my convention time was I would watch them critique portfolios because I wanted to be a writer and you were an artist, and I wanted to see what they would talk about to the artists and stuff like that. So it's kind of geeky now that I think about it, which I'm a geek, so who cares? But I remember spending probably a couple hours while you were wandering off doing other things and just watching DC people or Marvel people critique different portfolios, and I was probably the guy that the critiquer would keep looking at, going, "Who are you? You know, why are you standing here?" But I would kind of creep back in and just listen and you know just hear what they had to say. I'm not sure what I was trying to gain out of it, but I found it interesting anyway, and
Yeah.
you know that was a fun time for me hearing what other people critique about artists, different artists or something. That was very interesting.
Yeah, that was that tent. I had shown my stuff. There was an artist named Brian Murray, similar to your Ross Andrew story, but similar. Brian Murray is like, oh man, you got to talk to this Rob Liefeld. He's the person you want to talk to. And so I was like, oh okay. So we went to that tent, and I introduced myself. You know, and there's Brian Murray, and I don't think he was there, but he kind of like goes, "Oh yeah, this is the guy I was telling you about." And so he had me come around to the back side of the table,
Yeah, I
and
was
I was
very
sitting.
jealous.
Yeah, but I got to sit and talk with Liefeld for a while, and so I was in between Liefeld and Eric Larson, and while Liefeld was trying to like sign things and then talk a little bit, then sign things and talk a little bit, I thought, well, Larson isn't, getting the same amount of love as Liefeld was. So I thought, you know what? I'll just sketch like a whatever Savage Dragon. I was going to sketch him. So I started drawing out Savage Dragon's head, and then Larson goes, "No, the fin comes straight out, like it's a 90-degree angles from his forehead." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got a lesson on how to draw a Savage Dragon from Eric Larson. And then I heard another voice going like, "That's not bad." And I turn, and as I'm turning, I swung my elbow around to see who it was that said it, and I just elbowed Todd McFarlane. And I was like, "That's not a bad little moment there in my life, early career path."
Right, yeah.
But yeah, they were all there, from Jim Lee, Wells Pertasio,
It's
and
Jim Lee.
and then Mark Silvestri. I mean, it was like maybe it wasn't Brian Murray. I think Brian Murray was at Dearborn.
Yeah, we met him
but
at
then,
Dearborn. He was a really nice guy. But I think it was Jim. Was it Valentine?
Jim
Valentino?
Jim Valentino is the one who said you got to talk to Rob Liefeld, because those two were like really tight.
What did
So
he do? Like Nighthawk or something like that? What did he
yeah,
do?
Darkhawk, was that right? Or Shadowhawk?
Shadowhawk.
Shadowhawk, yes.
Yeah,
Something with Hawk.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
he
it was
did
kind
the
of
original Guardians of the Galaxy. Or no, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Marvel. Yeah, he did that.
Yep.
Like the futuristic Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel.
Yeah, where that dude found, basically it was like all the stuff that was in current time, they found in the future, like Captain
Right.
America's shield and Thor's hammer or whatever,
Yeah.
and they just kind of pulled it all together.
Yeah,
And,
Shadowhawk. Yeah.
yeah, which was kind of like Wolverine meets Batman with
Right.
some other nuance.
Right. I probably have a copy somewhere.
Yeah, I think I did as well. It was just like, well, I had it signed, so I think I bought a copy for the express purpose of getting it signed. I never read it, and honestly, I don't think I ever flipped through it.
Yeah.
I think it was just like, these people are going to be there. If I'm going to wait in line, might as well have that one signed as well. But yeah, and I think that was like Liefeld was doing like a 24-hour signing session. It was like, because that was like Youngblood #1 had just come out, and it was going to be
Wow.
like there was like the gimmick, or the hook was that he was going to be there for 24 hours straight signing, and then he had given out like certificates of authenticity
Yeah. I saw that
to
one.
everybody who signed their issue.
Yeah, weren't we going to, like, in the middle of the night, we were going to go back and talk to him or something, but
Something like
I
that.
don't remember if we ever did.
Was
Nah,
that
it
like
was just
93 or
madhouse.
94?
I think it was 94.
It was 93, 94,
three.
somewhere around there. I can't remember because they all kind of, as you get older, the memory starts to fade. You get my walker.
Matt just turned 50, so he's the youngin'.
Yeah. 5 days ago.
That's right.
Wow. Welcome to the good old geriatrics club.
AARP's calling.
Nice. I met McFarlane probably around the same time. It was right after Spawn came out. And it was one of those deals where you stand in line for like 2 hours. And I remember I was behind this guy who had probably 50 comics he wanted Todd McFarlane to sign. And the sign clearly said that could only get 1 or 2 comics signed. And instead of just getting it signed, he stood there and argued with Todd McFarlane for 10 minutes. And Todd McFarlane's handlers were coming over, and they basically told him to hit the road, right? And then after he left, I was like the next one, and they're still like, "Can you believe that guy?" And and I was joining in. I was like, "I can't believe the guy was acting like that." And Todd reaches over and he grabs my hand and he looks at me. He's like, "Thank you, thank you." And then they signed my comic, and I immediately sold it for $20.
It's out there somewhere. Somebody's got that issue going. Like, I feel there's some sort of importance to this. It's not just that it's signed, but it's got something more to it.
Right.
The funny thing is, if someone offered me $20 to stand in a line for 2 hours, I would have said no.
Yeah, that era, the thought of, because you thought you could make it, you thought you could get into the industry, and there was always that, like, it's part of the American dream. It's kind of like, I could become the next great comic artist. And since there was such a boom, and when all the Image people left, you're like, oh, so there's a couple things that happened. Like, it caused a void. When all the Image people left Marvel, then it's like, oh, then that means that Marvel's looking for talented people to replace them. And then when you looked at who replaced them, it's like, I can draw better than that.
Right.
Because there was some of that stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, what is that?
Well, you guys can draw better than that. I know I can't draw better than that. I've seen both of your art. You guys can draw better than that. I could not. So I had to wheel and deal as a writer to try and get my foot in, and of course that was really successful, as you can see. But it was fun.
Led to a podcast,
right? Yeah, it was fun doing.
I was going to say, before we got on here, I was looking at this manila envelope of rejection letters from comic companies, and it was. And I remember, like, maybe a year or so after I got them, every time I'd look at it, I'd feel like a failure. But now I look at it, and it makes me smile. Thinking about the stuff that I got into when I was younger and the people I met. And now that I think about it, I only got like one legit offer to draw comics, and it was from Ben Edlund, and he offered that I could draw like backup stories for Tick comics, because he was looking to expand the Tick universe. But he basically said, "Yeah, but we can't really pay you. You could do it. It's kind of like one of those deals. You could do it for exposure and stuff like that." And I thought about it, and I was like, I can't do it. I've got responsibilities. I got an apartment to pay for. But every once in a while, I think of, like, what if I would have taken that road and, just sucked it up for a year or two.
Sure,
but,
you're the intern.
It was fun meeting him and getting the offer.
Yeah, there's that level is now being, like, overly exploited, but it was that exposure. Like, you can show somebody, I did this comic, and I worked on this comic, and then I was involved in this comic, and it's like, wow, you actually did legit professional work. Okay, well, that gives you a lot more clout. But now it's like, you can't get away with just saying, I'm not going to pay you for a month's worth of your life.
Matt, the nicest person you met while going to conventions?
That's a tough one. You mentioned that question earlier, so I was trying to jot down some nice people that I met, and I've got like a 3-way tie between Stan Lee, Jim Steranko, and Bob Wyacek. It's hard to tell the Stan Lee, get into Stan Lee without telling you the long story, and the same with Steranko. But Bob Wyacek was just genuinely a super nice guy, and I've met him like 3 times, and every time I've met him, he has no idea who I am. He doesn't remember me from the last time, but he'll spend like a really long time just talking to me and, basically telling you how the sausage is made and showing you all of his artwork, and just a really good down-to-earth kind of guy.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you saying something about Stan Lee before, too.
I can tell the story if you'd like.
Go ahead. We have a Stan Lee story, too, but it's not as interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, probably back in like 1994, during the Philadelphia Comic Extravaganza, Stan Lee was like the headliner, I believe. And my buddy Blair and I lived in Maryland, and we were like, let's drive to Philly and we'll get some of our old comic books signed by Stan Lee. And I had a bunch of really early Amazing Spider-Man, and he had like X-Men #1 and a couple other things. So we were so excited, and we drove all the way there. And when we got in there, we realized that you had to pre-purchase tickets to, get Stan Lee's autograph.
Yeah.
And we had missed out on it. And we were like really, really bummed out because that's the whole reason we were there. We were standing around sort of lamenting our mistakes and like we're not going to meet our hero and all this stuff. And there was this lady that was kind of like sidling up to us, and we turned around and she had sort of like a badge on. And she's like, "What's the problem?" So we said, "Well, we drove all the way here from Maryland. We don't get to meet Stan Lee, and we were really excited to see him." And turns out this woman named Jan was the manager of the whole convention center. So she's like, before she told us that, she's like, "Okay, guys, follow me. Here's the story. You guys are my nephews. You're only here for 30 minutes. And you've got some comics you want signed, and you're going to go back to college." So we're like, okay. So we just started trailing behind her, and she's giving us more of our backstory. She opens up the side door to the convention center, this like sort of nondescript, non-labeled door. We follow her down this long, dark corridor. At the end of it, there's a room. It turns out it's the green room that Stan Lee is sitting in. So we walk in the door, it's just Stan and maybe like a handler or two of his just mulling around. And Jan walks in and she's like, "Stan, I want you to meet my nephews." And he gets up and, he's like everything that you'd ever imagine Stan Lee to be. He's like your fantasy grandpa. He gets up and he's smiling and he's like, "Hey, boys." And he's like, "What do you got there?" So we pulled out our, Spider-Man and X-Men, and he's like, "These are some great books, boys." And he pulls out his Sharpie and signs it, and we sit down and we're just chit-chatting for, like 10, 12 minutes or so. And then we say goodbye. It's like great meeting him, shake his hand and stuff like that. We walk out, and it was just like we were walking on air. It was like the best thing that ever happened. And we were filing past all these, hundreds of people standing in line who were all scowling at us that we got to go in and meet Stan Lee. So we got sort of a one-on-one conversation with Stan.
Wow.
So that's the best and biggest story I've got.
Sure, that's great.
So I wish I knew who this Jan woman was so I could send her a thank you note.
Right, yeah. Mike, who's the nicest person you met?
That's a good question. I'm going to pull the same trick Matt did, and that's basically going to pull out the three names: Paul Denny, Chip Kidd, and Mike Allred. And, they were all like amazing, to kind of just, when you were in an environment, I think the one out of those three, I think Mike Allred was the nicest. And it was like Mad Men had just hit like the mainstream interest, because he already had like some of those, I think it was like a Tundra Press had done like the first couple of his issues, and it was before, or Kitchen Sink Press. I can't remember if it was Tundra or Kitchen Sink, but then it moved to Dark Horse. But it hadn't quite moved to Dark Horse yet, and so he wasn't a really well-known person at that time. He had some like Mad Men pins and stuff like that, and we got to talking, and I showed him my artwork, and he's like, "Do you have these pages here?" And I said, "I've got them out in my car." I was like, "Oh, I'd love to ink these pages that I had drawn." And I'm like going, "You got to be kidding me." And this was like him voluntarily, because it was a Dr. Fate story that Andy had written, and I had done the illustration for it. And he's like, "Oh, this is great. I'd love to have inked it." And it's like, holy crap, I could have had like original, one-of-a-kind inked by Mike Allred artwork. And he could have erased everything I had done, and I would have been just as happy.
Yeah.
Right.
That was really, really cool. And he just chatted and was talking comics and how much he just enjoys, getting out there, meeting fans and everything. So it was that level. And I don't know if he's that way now. I don't see why he wouldn't be, but it was just that kind of like that enthusiasm and that excitement about being in the industry.
Yeah, where was that at?
That, I think it was a Chicago con. I think it was a Wizard World, I think is what it was called at that time. I think it was like one of the last Wizard Worlds I went to.
Mad Men was so cool. I remember when he went to Dark Horse and they had, remember they would give out those free little newspapers with like Mad Men comics in them and like concrete and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember those. Those were so cool. I used to have a big stack of those. Like Paul Chadwick's Concrete, and stuff
Concrete.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a booming time for Dark Horse because I mean they Sin City was coming out shortly after that.
Oh yeah.
Hellboy and that whole like line because like Art Adams was supposed to do that Monkey Man and O'Brien.
Yeah.
There was
Yep.
Paul Chadwick's Concrete. Jeff Darrow was doing some stuff. I believe I don't know if was Rusty the Boy Robot, Big Guy and Rusty
Yep.
was that
Yep.
around that same era?
Yeah.
Hard Boiled.
John Byrne had Next Men.
Oh yeah. So I mean, Dark Horse was like top of the game. Now it's like Dark what?
I know.
They've
It
got,
used to
they've
be
got
so
some
cool.
things. Yeah.
It kind of went the way of Vertigo for DC, kind of just faded away.
Because I mean, they lost. They got heavy into licenses. I mean, they had the Star Wars license, the Conan license, the Aliens and Predator, and all sorts of stuff. And they were doing great with those. But at the same point, it's like, oh, you guys are heavy into these licenses.
Yeah.
And the Mask was around that time too, I think.
I
So
think
like
so.
Dark Horse was like unstoppable for a while. But gone are the days of barbed wire.
Oh yeah. How
For
about you,
every
Andy?
good thing.
For me, probably the nicest person, kind of similar to how you guys were talking about trying to get your portfolio in there. At one convention, it was a Detroit convention, and I got to sit with Mike Baron, who did like The Badger and Nexus. He did a Flash run for DC. I got to sit with him, and he was just the nicest guy, and he was running a writer's class at the time too, so I got to sit in with that, and he just would talk to me about writing, and he looked at a Nexus script that I had done, because I knew I was going to meet him for that, so I of course tried to prepare something that he would like. He looked at that with me. We actually emailed back and forth afterwards for a little bit. He was just a really nice guy, very helpful. He liked my stuff, or he told me he liked my stuff. If he was just being polite, he was very polite. It was just a really interesting guy. I ate a piece of pizza with him. Just kind of sat around, and he just told me how he broke in and stuff like that. Nice guy.
Yeah, it's got to be hard. I mean, like with the comics being obviously a picture's worth 1,000 words, the art is so much easier to assess on the spot. It's like, hey, I got this guy, he's got 3 elbows on this guy on this drawing in order to make this pose work. Or the proverbial Rob Liefeld chest thrust out Captain America, where it's like, ooh, the anatomy's way wrong. But there's like, you can spot that pretty quickly, but it's like, how does a convention work for a writer?
Yeah,
I
constantly, was told to just submit something, and they'd have a chance to look at it at some point in the future. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But I would just drop off envelopes at DC's table or Marvel's table or whatever, and then not hear back. 'Cause I did get some rejection letters, so I have that folder too, Matt. But but it was just looking back, like I said before, it was a fun time just to try it. But there wasn't a lot of critiquing on the spot kind of thing. What are they going to say? Oh, you spelled that wrong, or
Yeah.
this sentence doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It was fun times.
I will say though that DC probably had the nicest rejection letters because I think it was just because of the stationery that they were
letterhead,
using.
yeah.
They had the big, the Saul Bass DC logo at the top, but then on the back of the paper was all those superheroes standing on the shoulders of the other superheroes, and then the last superhero at the top was holding the DC emblem. So like if you just flipped it over, you'd see all these superheroes standing on top of each other. But if you flip the paper onto the front, you saw the DC logo. But if you held it up to the light, you saw all those superheroes standing on top of each other's shoulders in a vertical column, and then holding that DC logo through the other side of the paper.
Yeah, that was pretty
And it
cool.
was like, that was worth. And he's like, yeah, you can turn me down if this is what I'm getting. It's like, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Right. The worst rejection letter was probably from Malibu Comics, and it was just like they had like 3 choices they could check off. Like we really like your stuff. Yeah. Then there was like, we don't like your stuff, and another thing. And so they basically just checked it off and stuck it in an envelope and mailed it to me. So it wasn't even worth looking at. But the Marvel one was cool because it had Spidey up at the top and him swinging in.
Yeah.
This is like loser talk, It's like,
Yeah. Well,
we're trying to pick
let-
the best little parts out of rejection and
Yeah.
sadness.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
You should have been in
It,
the last episode where we were grumpy old men, just
Oh, good.
ripping apart the
I'd be good at
comic
that one.
industry.
yeah.
Uh huh. Oh, did I ever tell you that Andy? Did I ever tell you the story about David McFarlane?
Go for
Okay,
it.
so when I was about 19 years old, I lived in Newark, Delaware, and I worked in a post office for like the summer. I was like a summer, like scab. That I guess they were having some sort of a strike or something with the union, so they hired a bunch of college kids. And so anyway, while I was sorting mail in there, I saw David McFarlane's name, and I was like, I wonder if this is the same guy. So every day I'd keep an eye on his mailbox, which is probably pretty stalkery, and I noticed that he was getting packages from Marvel Comics. I wrote a little letter to him, and I slipped it in his post office box and asked him if he had any advice for, a young guy who's thinking about getting into comics. So I sort of forgot about it, and then he wrote me a 3-page letter back, all typed out, like on computer paper back then. It was just really nice advice of, like how to submit stuff, and don't get your hopes up because they've got literally like piles and piles of stuff that they have to get through, and could be a year or two. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I went to the Baltimore Comic-Con, and he was there, and there was like an hour and a half, 2-hour line to meet him. So I had some comics I wanted him to sign, and when I got up to him, I said, hey, I don't know if you remember this, but back in the early 90s, maybe 1990 or 91, I slipped a letter into your post office box, and he totally remembered. At least he told me he did.
Right.
He was like, yeah, I remember that. So we had like a fun little reunion for a little bit there.
Sure, that's
But
pretty
anyway,
cool.
really super nice guy.
That's pretty cool. Okay, let's do the opposite now. We have the nicest person you met. How about the rudest or the biggest disappointment?
Yeah, I've got one. Now this, I don't know what was happening, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt on this one, just because like there may have been a medical issue, especially knowing how he is at the moment. But at the launch of Dark Horse's Legend imprint, they had a massive signing at Chicago, and it was like, I mean, you had Art Adams, you had Jeff Darrow, you had
Miller.
Frank Miller, you had Mike Mignola, you had, I think there was somebody, Mike Allred, I think might have been even in, I think he was, in on that lineup. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is like the creme de la creme of, comic artists all in one room.
Right, everyone we
And
liked.
yeah, yeah. And it was just this line that went on forever. And I just remember going like the hedge maze in The Shining of a hallway. It just, it serpentined all over. And finally, oh, it's got to be around this corner. We can finally see the room. Oh, crap. The line continues. And I
Right.
think, Andy, you may have actually walked out of the line, walked down. And it's like, yeah, we're not even close to the door when
Yeah,
we
I
came
do remember
back.
that.
And it's like, holy crap, this is taking a long time. Well, then we finally are getting into the room, and we're just about to enter the room. We're in like the hallway, about like 10 people back from being able to enter this ballroom. And all of a sudden, it's like there's a commotion going on in the room. And it's like, oh, what's going on? And it's like people are just like frantic. And it's like, then this lady comes almost running out of the room. It's like, Frank Miller is leaving. Frank Miller is leaving. If you want anything signed by Frank Miller, have it ready and have it to the page right now. He just got up, and apparently he said enough's enough or whatever. Maybe there was a medical reason, but he just got up in the middle of the signing that everybody was waiting for and just walked out. And sure enough, it was like panic because you're thinking, oh crap, I gotta find something for him to sign. And he just came by and just and walked on, and it was just kind of like, do you remember the Fifth Element movie where Ruby Rod just basically grabs that like that paintbrush almost like thing and just walks by and signs all those fans, with just a dripping paint kind of a deal, and it's like that's his signature kind of a deal. That's what it was basically like. He just walked, and we were, like I said, like we were about 10 people out, if that, and we were among the last of him to sign, and then he just kind of like went to the other side of the hallway and just vanished as quickly as he could to get out of there.
Yeah, he kind of ignored the
Wow.
rest of us, or the rest of the people after, like,
Yeah,
six after us, and he just walked out, and it was like, he had enough, and we were lucky to even get a signature.
That's not cool.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I can understand if it's like, hey, if you got to be somewhere at a certain time, but then it's like, but everybody else was still there. I mean, like all the other bigwigs were still able to hold out and do it. he just was like, enough is enough. And I don't know if it was like somebody said something or the body odor was just enough to kind of chase him out. I was like, dude, I can't deal with this anymore, or whatever it was. But, and like I said, I got to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially seeing his state right now. It's like, oh, maybe there was something there. But I just, at that time, I was like, this is unbelievable. Just to kind of like walk out on the fans. Oh, I will say there's one other one. Crap, and I'll come back to it if you guys have time.
No, go ahead. Because I don't have one. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, you'll remember this once I start talking about it. So this is we were at a Chicago convention, and I remember we were walking around, and Steve Rude was right next to John Byrne in the artist. It wasn't like artist alley at all. It was just kind of like they had people just kind of scattered. And I remembered, it said John Byrne is away from the table at the moment. He'll be back at a certain time or something like that. Or just, oh no, it just said John Byrne, and that was like this was his table space, and right next to him was
empty.
Steve Rude, and it was just empty. He wasn't there at the table, which is fine. I mean, use the restroom, grab something to eat, just walk around or whatever, do whatever you need to do. That wasn't a designated time. But then we were in line for Steve Rude, got his stuff signed, and then we saw that it said John Byrne. It's like, should we just hang out here for a little bit to see if he shows up? It's like, we can give him like 5 minutes, and then we can go on. And so we waited 5 minutes, and sure enough, the dude shows up. And he sits down at the table, and we're like, ooh. And we're kind of like grabbing stuff out of backpacks and getting ready to, okay, he's going to sign this one for me or this or whatever. And then he's writing on a piece of note, and then he folds this piece of paper in half and makes a little table tent out of it. And says like, John Byrne is not here. He sets down a stack of magazines on top of the table and starts flipping through them. And it was like a crap ton of Playboy magazines. And he's just flipping through Playboy magazines. His feet are propped up on the table. Andy and I are like, do we wait to see if he takes that sign down? But in the meantime, this is a little creepy watching this old man, kind of just like, flipping through porn magazines right in front of us. And I'm like going, there's kids around and stuff like that. It's like, dude,
Yeah, I remember.
Maybe they do things differently in Canada, but that was weird.
I remember him telling someone that he collected them. So I mean, it was part of his new collection. Playboys.
It's like Al Bundy.
Right? Yeah.
He's such a douche, though.
Right.
You
He
know?
is.
I think he's softened a little as he's gotten older, but there was a
He's
period of
getting
time
less
when he
work.
was a real jerk.
Well, he's getting less work. It's
Yeah.
kind of the, and I've not watched the documentary on Amazon yet, but it's kind of the Val Kilmer thing where it's like you're your own worst enemy. It's like, you're hard to work with. People don't like working with you. Your ego's getting in the way. And then now that jaded everybody and they don't want to work with you, now you're like, uh-oh, all those years of doing that, now I've pinned myself into a corner and I can't get out. So now I want to be nicer to people.
How about you, Matt?
Can I tag on to John Byrne?
Sure, go ahead.
And then I've got another one. Well, John Byrne, I wrote a letter to the letters column in Next Men, and I forget what issue it was. But when he got it, he printed it because I've learned that if you argue with the editors or the writers, they'll print it because they want to get their 2 cents in.
Right.
But when he edited my letter, he changed it all around to where it was sort of unintelligible and made me sound stupid, and then answered it as if I was an idiot.
Okay.
And then that was the last Next Men I ever read. I was just like, what a douche.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
He's a jerk. Probably, I haven't had a lot of people that were really rude to me, but like, I remember I met Neil Adams.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I just felt like when I walked up to him, there was no one at his table, and I think it was because he was charging so much for his signatures, and and he expected you to buy something if you walked up. I had like an old Green Lantern comic that I wanted him to sign, and I was the only one there, and he looked just kind of like angry. He was just like angry that I was even there, and he talked to me for a second, but he just seemed annoyed and he wanted me to go away. So and it made me feel even worse about giving him $50 to scribble his name on a comic. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, he invented that. He was the first artist, and there's some rationale behind it, but he was the first artist to charge for signatures. because he, was like, hey, you're gonna either one flip it, as soon as you signed it, get that Spawn issue signed and get $20 from it, but
Yep,
or
exactly.
it's
That's
like
my
you're gonna
first
flip
flip.
this thing, yeah. So then he's like, I'm gonna get a little bit of that action too. And it's like, oh, yeah, but then again, it's like you gotta remember these are fans. These are people who waited in line. They've already given you money in the form of waiting hours in line for you to sign something.
Right.
It's like if time equals money, then that's you already got your payment.
I love the guys that will take money, but they'll donate it to like Heroes Initiative. So
Yeah.
at least you feel like something good is happening with your cash.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I got suckered by Joe Stanton, I think, into doing that. It's like he did like E-Man and he did Green Lantern art for quite a long while.
Yeah, he did.
And it's like, holy crap, that's Joe Stanton. And I went up and I had like something to have him signed. And this other guy I was working with, now this is a business trip. So it was kind of like we were trying to talk to people and like, hey, what about this? And getting a license and so forth. And he's like going, well, it's like, hey, I wouldn't mind signing that for you. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's going to be $5 or something like that. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It wasn't clearly advertised. It's like, well, I'm giving it to this cause. And it's like, that's good. But at the same point, I wasn't expecting to pay either.
Right.
So, it's kind of like, yeah, can you give me a receipt so I can write this off of my taxes then? Or something?
Those, I don't have a rude person story, but and my biggest disappointment story is kind of not towards anybody I met. It was more towards me. Now I don't shy I don't shy away from saying that I love George Perez and I want him to have my babies. I don't shy away from that at all. So after waiting in line to meet George Perez, Mr. Perez, I was so disappointed in myself because I had nothing to say to him when I went up there. I was like totally in shock from this is a guy that did New Teen Titans and Crisis on all my favorite books, and here I am with like 5 comics for him to sign. And first of all, he had a really high pitched voice. That Mike and I used to joke that it sounded like Mickey Mouse, and that it's hello, how you doing? And maybe it was the shock of that or something, but
It just threw you.
right.
Yeah.
And then I'd like, I like your work, or like I
Yeah.
try to get something out of my mouth, and it's just like
Drawing's pretty.
right,
Yeah.
you do good work, and
I want an official Red Ryder rifle BB gun.
right, yeah. And I'm just so disappointed in myself. I met him a couple times, and each time it's like I got nothing. It's I can't. Words will not come out of my mouth to say how much I love you, and it's just that's probably my biggest disappointment. Those are some pretty good stories. Is there any stories, Matt, that you are dying to tell other than the Stan Lee one? Oh, we didn't tell our Stan Lee one, Mike. Do you remember our Stan Lee story?
I remember it, but I don't know if I remember it accurately. I mean, there's been a lot of embellishment and like fantasy that's kind of. I mean, like I won't talk about the unicorns I remember seeing at the same time when I saw Stan Lee or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'll try to pull some of that back.
The only time that I saw Stan Lee was at C2E2. I think. Oh no, it was probably Wizard World.
It was. Yeah, I think actually it was before that because it wasn't at the Rosemont Convention Center. I don't think. I think it was it was like at a different hotel.
Okay, and we had not seen him during the convention, but he sat next to us while we were having lunch at one of the hotel restaurants, and we were like kind of whispering, and should we go over there and talk to him or anything like that? And we of course ended up not doing it because we're both introverts, and we both are incredibly shy. At least at the time, I certainly was. I probably would today. That was my only encounter with Stan Lee. Was like, that's Stan Lee over there, and you couldn't mistake him for somebody else because of his voice. And he was talking to other people. I'm not sure why I thought, oh, he's going to reject us. That was my only encounter with Stan Lee. I was breathing the same air as him.
Yeah, he was. I remember some of the conversation to a degree. He's like, "You boys like comics?" as he was sitting talking, and I just remember him because at the time he had just kind of quote unquote returned to writing comics. He was doing, I think, Ravage 2099, and as part of that, like Spider-Man 2099, Punisher 2099, Doom 2099, they had that whole 2099 offshoot, and he was doing, I think it was either Ravage, Rampage, something like that. I can't remember the name of that series, but he was kind of hawking that book at that time. And I remember one of the lines that was said is like, make certain you read the 20 or like 2099 series or something like that. It was like, you mean 2099? It's like, it was like 2099. It's like, it's not a zip code, Stan. It's supposed to be a year.
Did he say niner?
Niner nine. Yeah, 29 niner. But it's just, oh my gosh, it was so great. Because it was just
He
like...
probably would have loved to talk to you.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was just one of those things where it's like, you just are like, well, we're as close as we can get to royalty in the comic book industry right at this moment. So let's just enjoy it and bask in it. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, a butterfly just landed on my finger. If I move at all, if I breathe the wrong way, it's going to fly away. Right. So let's just stay absolutely motionless and just enjoy having this butterfly of Stan Lee on our finger kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think some of it was he was eating lunch, we were eating lunch, and he didn't seem bothered by other people coming up to him, but I almost felt like, oh, he doesn't need more people to come up and talk to him while he's eating lunch. Like, I don't want to bother him, let him enjoy his food kind of thing.
Well, and it made it worse was the fact that this wasn't the eatery that was associated with the convention center. It was like 2 hotels away. He was either one trying to escape from the fans and get into like I can eat in peace here or something. But he was, clearly like, I need to separate myself from the convention at least a little bit so it's not going to be inundated with fans. I can at least take one bite without having been to tell some story about the 1960s or the Marvel bullpen or say Excelsior one more time.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you got that a lot. Let me ask this question. Person you still have yet to meet and want to. Anybody out there, Matt, that you just are dying to get a signature from or a chat with?
Maybe like Ed Brubaker.
Okay.
Dang it. That was mine.
Oh, yeah? No kidding. Yeah. He's like probably my favorite writer now, and I mean, I've got some autographs from him because I buy all the criminal stuff, and his new hardbound books always have like the little book plates that are signed on the inside. But I'd love to meet him, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts with him in it, and he's not anything like you'd think he would be. He's like way nerdier. He's not as cool as you think he would be.
Yeah, he knows how to write cool characters, but yeah, he's not. I guess he was an army brat or something like that, or Navy, one of the two, something like that, where he just kind of got hauled around from place to place. So that's why he's like so well rounded as far as knowledge of different areas and just life in the various parts of the world. Well done, though. Really amazing stuff, especially any of his collaborations with Sean Phillips.
Oh yeah,
those are must-haves. And speaking of, I mean, like what's most appropriate would be a highly recommend a comic for people who might like this podcast and talk about grumpy old men in comics. Bad Weekend was.
Oh, that's so good.
That's a perfect comic book convention story, and I don't know how much of it's based on truth. And some of the, like it's loosely allegory to some famous comic artists of yore. I won't throw a name out there, but because I highly respect that particular cantankerous old man that it may be based on. But it's still an amazing, amazing book.
I'll have to look at that one.
Have you read Howard Chaykin's Hey Kids comics?
No.
It's basically the same sort of thing. It's like these thinly veiled characters representing, basically older comic creators that got screwed in the annals of comic history. But it's probably a little bit more depressing than Bad Weekend because it's so on the nose. And but if you like to know how the sausage is made and stuff and what really happened according to Howard Chaykin, that's kind of a good read.
Well, I mean, that dude's been around for ages, and it was right at that kind of that turning point, with the comic industry as a whole going from like the golden age people were getting completely booted out because of the demanding of like retirement money and wanting health care, outrageous claims that they wanted, requests from the businesses that they brought millions upon billions of dollars to just offer some of that benefits. There's an underbelly of the comic world that is just like unfortunate to think about. You know, it's like, especially like, you know, you think about like Bill Finger and all the other people that, you know, ghost writers, ghost artists, ghost creators that never got their due. And I still think that DC's hosed them over with, you know, at least with Superman, it's Siegel and Schuster or whatever, but Batman is Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And it's like, wait a minute. The semantics are way off on that. You know, because the and has an equal collaboration. With is like Bob Kane did all the heavy lifting, and Bill Finger just said like, "Oh, here's an idea." And it's like, no, Bill Finger created it. Bob Kane just had a better lawyer.
Right, exactly. To tag onto that story, can I do an honorable mention? Jim Steranko, the first time I met him, I asked him about his famous story about him slapping Bob Kane. Did you ever hear that story?
No, this sounds amazing though.
It is amazing. I read about it in some obscure article. So when I mentioned it to him, he got sort of a twinkle in his eye, and he told me, he's like, if I'm only known for one thing, and that's, and he quote unquote bitch slapping Bob Kane, I'm happy with that. Apparently, what happened was that it was the first time that he'd ever got to meet Bob Kane, and it was like sort of at a convention in a fancy hotel or something. So Bob Kane walks up, and Jim Steranko said that he was sort of acting like he was kind of like a mob boss and going around and like, you know, like whacking people on the back and, hey, how you doing, buddy? And he saw Jim Steranko, and he smacked him on the face, and he was like, you know, like hey, and he cupped him on the face like, hey, buddy, and slapped him real hard. And it really pissed off Jim Steranko. And, you know, Jim Steranko's got a chip on his shoulder bigger than he is. And he said it shocked him. So he said he was going to get him back. So he basically followed him up another floor. And when the elevator door opened, he just, like, hauled off and smacked Bob Kane in the face and stood there because he thought that Bob Kane was going to hit him back or something.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't do anything, so then Jim Steranko said he just got bored and walked away.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's brilliant.
I love
So that was the first time I met Steranko. Yeah, he was awesome. If he's not like flirting with your wife or telling you how to extend your life by 25% by only sleeping 3 hours a night, he's got nothing but great stories. Yeah, he's awesome though. He's like my second favorite comic celebrity behind Stan that I've met.
Yeah. And he's one of those that's, like you said, there's a difference between Neil Adams and Steranko, and they both had huge impact on the comic industry. But Neil Adams, there's an ego to it, whereas Steranko's like, dude, this is just fun, man. We're making silly stories about spandex wearing people. How can you take it seriously?
Yeah, I remember him. My wife was there with me, and he was in the middle of a conversation with someone about these like beautiful, sexy ladies that he hired to pose for him for his comics, and he's like, "Not as beautiful as your wife here." He's like, he still has it. He's like 81, still has it.
All right.
I mean, like everything about him is just. Yeah, that dude, he changed the comic industry. And then he, like where Neil Adams, made like claims on a lot of stuff, from the, like, I created the direct market. I created the dollar comic. I created the, those giant dollar comics or whatever they're called, like DC's $1 for a giant, like 84-page giant, I think is what they're called, or something like that. He single-handedly claims he did that. He created the direct comic industry, or direct market industry, and it's like...
Steranko?
No, Neil Adams.
Oh, okay.
But then, it's almost one of those things where it's like, I could claim to be that stormtrooper that said, hey, look, sir, droids. And it's like, no one can say that I wasn't that guy, that said that.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, there's no one's got records for that. But he's like, I did this. And it's like, but Steranko comes across and it's like, that dude, he doesn't have to say anything. You invent your own stories about that guy.
Right.
It's just so completely different.
I was listening to an interview with Neil Adams, and it may have been like Kevin Smith or something, but like it seemed like Neil Adams was just claiming credit for literally everything good that happened in
Yeah.
the comic industry. So it's like either he's like the greatest guy ever, or he's something else.
Yeah, I kind
I
of
created paper. Without me, they wouldn't have had comic books.
Right.
there's stories about like the John Burns of the industry. Neil Adams certainly up there as one of the jerks of the industry.
Yeah, what was one of the things that was interesting was I remembered at San Diego Comic Con waiting in line forever to talk to somebody, and I don't remember who it was. I think it was like an image creator or something like that. And, waiting in line for him, got it signed, walked out, and then I looked behind me, and that line just was just as long as it was when I came into it. So it was just like this thing was going on forever. And the guy, you could just see every time he signed another issue for another person and the next person come up in line, that you could almost feel like everybody that came up was another pump in the balloon of his ego. But the moment then I saw I needed to grab something to eat. So I left the convention hall, walking out, and there's just this mass exodus all the time of people coming in, exiting, coming in, exiting, coming in, exiting. As I was waiting for this train, because there's that like gas lamp district or whatever it is right across the street from the convention center, there's a commuter train that zips by all the time. So we're all waiting for that train to pass, and I look over, and there's that guy. And I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but I just remembered, like, there he is standing there. I waited hours for this guy to sign something, and maybe not hours, but I waited a long time to have him sign something. And then there he is right there, and no one is around. And it was just that moment of realization of, like, these people are, like, gods within that convention center. But then once you take them out, no one knows who they are.
Right, yeah.
If they don't have that name plaque in front of them saying, like, I am so-and-so, I would never know. Like, if you said, I love Jeff Darrow's artwork, but if I saw Jeff Darrow walk down the street among other, like, 10 other people, I would not be able to point him out in that lineup. It's just like, you're famous within that building. You're just a regular Joe outside of that building.
I just thought of somebody else I want to meet. I have not ever met Keith Giffen, and I would love to meet him once. Just, he did all these Justice Leagues that I loved, and some Legion of Superheroes stuff that I really love, and I've never encountered him in any convention that I've gone to. I would love to meet him, and I just realized that. And I know, Mike, you've met Marv Wolfman, but I'd probably like to meet Marv Wolfman too. Other than that, I'm not sure there's anybody that I'm dying to meet.
If you ever met Keith Giffen, I would just have him, if I could have you ask him, what the heck was that trencher art style he had done?
It was unique, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh.
So many lines.
That were just like, it's one continuous drawing. It was like watching, do you remember the Highlights magazine? And where it'd have like, can you find these 10 items hidden inside of this image? That's what that trencher comic felt like. It's like, can you, in this scrawl that's on this page, can you determine what's the hero? Can you find the hero in this page?
I just always felt sorry for the colorist. For
oh my gosh, yeah.
Because there were so many lines. How could you even figure out where one started and one stopped?
Yeah, that was not an easy color fill.
You guys mentioned Marv Wolfman. He's on my little list of rude people I've met.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was just like minorly rude. I guess I just was unsatisfied because I walked up and I was like, hey, can I get your autograph? And it was like, the first appearance of Bullseye in Daredevil. And he had kind of like this old man, like where they have got resting angry face. and I was so excited to see him, and he just seemed like he was mad at me. and he signed my comic, and then I walked away, and I felt like almost apologetic for bothering him. Do you guys remember a comic artist and a writer back in like the early 80s or late 70s named Bob Hall?
Not right off.
No. He did like a little bit of everything. He's like kind of like I don't know, maybe. He was kind of like the Al Milgrom type of guy that would like fill in whenever you needed an artist.
Yep.
So anyway, I wanted to get a couple of Daredevil signs, so I walk up and I was like, hey, how you doing? And, of course he's like drawing a picture for someone, so he's not really paying attention. And I said, can I get some? Would you mind signing some comics?" And he's like, "Sure." And I was like, "Do you charge for signing?" And this is like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And he was like, "Yeah, the first 3 are free, but after that, I charge $5 a piece." And I only had 4 comics for him to sign. I don't know why I had so many, but anyway, he signed all 4 of them. I handed him a 20, and he just stuck it in his pocket. And then he didn't give me any change, so I was like, should I ask him for the change? But then I didn't know much about him, and he didn't look like a wealthy guy, so I was just like, well, I'll just let him keep the 20.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, what do you do in those situations? It's like you don't want to embarrass him, you don't want to embarrass yourself, and it's like
I know.
It's like, okay,
Oops.
just keep it. I'm gonna walk away slowly.
Well, here's another one, and I love the guy's artwork. I know he's got some personality issues and some other issues in general. But one of the things that was a little disappointing, like when people were spending like hundreds of dollars to get original artwork from various comic people at the convention. Normally, those things are like, yeah, I'll draw that when I'm like, I'll do these commission pieces after hours or something like that. You know, so that they're not doing it during the show. Again, Steve Rude, we were, waiting in line to have signed something, and he was like sketching out something. And, I don't know how much, obviously hundreds of dollars for a Steve Rude original, 8.5 by 11, just a letter drawing or whatever it was. But he had it on nice Bristol paper and stuff like that. So he had drawn the bulk of it, and then he hands that sheet of paper over to his assistant wife. I don't know who it was, but he says, everywhere I've marked an X, fill it in with a Sharpie marker. This lady then just proceeds to fill in all the black areas, all the, the shadows. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this person paid hundreds of dollars for a Steve Rude drawing, not Steve Rude and assistant. And I thought, that's a little shady. It's like, come on, dude. I know you're trying to assembly line this stuff and you just want to kind of hurry it up and get it out the door. But if I was the person who just plopped down that money and actually watched, it's the equivalent of the David Bowie video of Modern Love, where he reaches down as this like adoring fan, hands him a bouquet of flowers, and he's singing the song. He grabs the flowers, and then he takes like 3 paces over to the right and then hands the flowers over to some other fan in the audience. And it's like, obviously that fan intended those flowers to go to David Bowie, but then David Bowie just quickly hands them off to somebody else in the audience who's like, I got flowers from David Bowie. It's like, no, you got flowers from another fan. He just curried it over, the courier.
But he touched it.
He touched it, I guess, yes. But it was the same thing. It's like, I fully was expecting a Steve Rude, and then it's like, no, I got most of it, Steve, and then 30% some strange lady that just decided to become an inker at that moment.
Right. I do like when they sign and they do a little picture with it and stuff like that, because Stan Sakai did that little picture when I had a Usagi signature, and
Nice.
And that was great. Like, he was really nice too. I forgot that. It's great. I had Katie Cook do a Dr. Fate drawing for me once. That was really cool. At a con. So yeah, I love it when they do a little. I know when I got a Paul Chadwick signature, he did a little concrete image on that.
Oh, dude, do you have that still?
I do. Yeah.
I want to trade you.
Matt's got a kid or two probably he would be willing to part for that drawing.
I'm not sure. When I met him, I don't think I had a comic with me though, but he had like a little advertising thing with concrete on it, and he signed that for me. I think it was during that Legends with the Dark Horse thing.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So it wasn't a comic was signed, but it was a piece of concrete advertisement.
Yeah, because there was a stack of them. They were just like basically 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper folded in half. Yeah. So it was kind of like a mini booklet. It was introducing that Legends line.
Yeah, I got an Al Williamson one.
And then there was just like there's a little oval that they could sign during that event. Yeah. So yeah, they had one for like Art Adams, Mignola's, Hellboy, the Frank Miller's Sin City. So they all had something.
Yeah, it's really neat if you didn't have something for them to sign. You could still get a signature.
So that was kind of nice
Speaking
forethought.
speaking of art that is commissioned, my buddy Dave and I went to one of those little tiny conventions in New Jersey. Mark Texiero was there, and it was right when he just started drawing Ghost Rider. So it was, right when he started getting a little bit more popular, but he wasn't like full on popular at that point. So Dave and I decided that we were going to go and see if we could get him to paint the Ghost Rider, giving us the penance stare. So we're like, there's no way he's going to do it. So we walk up to him and we ask him, and he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And take a guess how much he was charging for like a full comic page penance stare, Ghost Rider, and a portrait.
What year was this?
92. I'm looking at it on the wall.
I'd say probably about even then I'd say probably about $100.
I would say less. I would say less back then. Probably $80.
$40.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's $40.
Dang.
So he's like, okay, I'll do it. So of course, Dave was the first one to go up and do it, and he paints this like beautiful painting of Ghost Rider giving him the penance stare, and he's like, I'm gonna need a break. Maybe come back near the end and I'll do yours. And I was like, okay. So I waited until the very end of the comic convention, and I walked up, and he saw me, and he just looked crestfallen. He was like, oh, like I got to do another one of those.
Right.
So he's like, is there any way that I can get out of this? And I was like, come on, man. Please. And I just like practically begged him, and he was like, all right, fine. But he was really funny about it. And the whole time he was making me pose for him, like make a really scary, frightened face. And so and everyone was laughing around because I looked so ridiculous. He finally finished it, and he's like, well, at least now I've got some pocket money to go get some dinner. And but for $40, I got this really great painting on my wall right now.
It was so cheap back then, though. I mean, that would have cost you probably $200 now at least.
Yeah.
Oh, or more. Yeah.
More, yeah. If it was actual that size and to do it on the spot like that.
Oh yeah.
I bought a Spider-Man comic page from Sal Buscema.
Now we're all stuttering that name.
Now you screwed me up. I used to think I knew how to pronounce it. But I bought a whole page, and he signed it to me, and it's like Spider-Man fighting the Puma, and he charged me $25.
Wow.
Oh.
That's crazy.
The whole comic page.
Dang, that's insane.
Inked and everything.
Wow.
Insane. Yeah, that's that original. I mean, like that is that issue. That's it right there. Yeah, back in the day. Andy and I sat in on a panel with a bunch of Golden Age artists, and one of them said, like, do you have any of your... It was like Sheldon Moldoff and a couple other people on that panel.
Was it Marty Nodell? And
yeah, I think so. And maybe one other person, but they're all from the Golden Age. And there's like, do you have any of your original art? It's like, you don't understand. At that time, the art was looked down upon as being so disposable that when they would run it through the presses to have it getting ready for a plate to be made to print these comics, that the artwork would be put on there to get transferred to become a plate. And when they peel it off to have it, okay, we've got the plate made, they would flip the artwork upside down so that the art was facing down, put it on the floor, and then that way they would have a nice surface to walk on in order so that the people working the presses wouldn't get themselves all covered in ink and goo. And it's like, so you think of all those original Golden Age comics, all those first appearances, all the key moments in comic history, the original art was just looked as being garbage to the point of well, we did what we needed to do with it. Now the only purpose it can serve is to be floor covering for us to walk upon. And then not even with the art side up, is the art side down. So they wouldn't even have to, that would absorb the ink and other dirt and debris. Yeah, at one point art was considered absolutely worthless, and now it's like a lot of people are making secondary careers out of just reselling their own artwork.
Oh yeah. I think Jim Steranko was one of the first people at Marvel to negotiate a contract where he got to keep all of his original artwork. But Marvel used to just give away the original artwork to people who visited the office.
Right.
If you got a tour of the office, they'd hand the kids out, Spider-Man pages or whatever.
Yeah, I only got to tour the DC offices in New York. I never got to the Marvel one.
Me neither.
Yeah, me neither. I barely left the state, Well, that's not entirely true, but definitely not for anything fun like that.
It's because all the outstanding warrants, Andy.
Right, I know, that's right.
Do you guys know the comic Black Sad?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
In fact, you're the
it's
one that told me to get it, and I did purchase it and read
Oh
it.
yeah, it's really really good. Anyway, it's drawn by a guy named Juanjo Guarnido, and he was at the Baltimore Comic Con, and I went up just to get him to sign my book for me. And I was the first one in line to get a signature. He flaps it open, and he just draws a portrait of Black Sad on the inside, like the whole size of the whole page, and signed his name with with an ink brush. And it's beautiful. It's like one of my favorite things I've got.
Oh, that's
Wow.
pretty sweet.
Yep, for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I always say, leave them wanting more. So I think that's good for our comic convention talk for now, unless somebody has a last minute fun story to tell. Yeah.
Some are shocking, because like there's some aspects of meeting childhood celebrities. I don't know. We only talked about comics at the comic convention, but there's a lot of celebrities that show up, and it's like, whew, not what you expect. Or some people where it's like, whoa, definitely, I didn't anticipate this person being there.
Right. Well, let's save that for the next one. Maybe we can have Matt back for another convention talk.
Oh, that'd be great.
Great.
Thanks, Matt, for coming on and sharing some stories with us. It's exactly what I wanted. It's a different perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was nice meeting you.
Yeah, and now
Yeah, I
I'm
already knew
having to
Andy.
do some. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry about
now I
that.
have to dig up like who is Bob Hall and
Right.
Black Sad and all these things that I've not been made aware of ahead of time. So
I think you'll
it gives
enjoy
me
Black
something to do
Sad.
it.
So and this is why I love comics. This is Andy, and
This is Michael.
And this is Matt.
yeah, and we'll talk to you next time. As always, thanks to Thunder Chicken for letting me use their music. Go check them out on Spotify.
These are some great books, boys.